In his chapter Ethics in the Face, Emmanuel Levinas is interested in the way that if ethics only ever matter in a relationship between two persons, then ethics has a transcendent or infinite quality, or it points to an irresolvable gap built within the idea of what we call ethics. So, if I'm interacting with another person, I can know perhaps a part of that person, but I can never know that person entirely. Human beings have a practically infinite depth to them, and that means that the other with a capital O, is ultimately unknowable. No matter how close the relationship, we never know the other entirely. He says, quote, "The other is infinitely transcendent, infinitely foreign," end of quote. And he makes much of language in this essay because while language gives us the ability to communicate a bit of ourselves to the other, language is also an imperfect tool that never conveys all it needs to convey about our depth. So if you've ever tried to convey how you feel to another person and found your words inadequate or incomplete, you know exactly what Levinas is getting at here. I like the way that philosopher Sarah Pessin puts it in her essay America's Love Problem, where she explains Levinas this way, quote, "A desire to befriend the neighbor is often linked to a desire to understand the neighbor. But as Levinas emphasizes in his critique of same-making as a totalizing allergy to difference, this quest to know my neighbor conceals a consumptive desire to make my neighbor into myself, to assume or to assure myself that the other is just like me, or at least enough like me to make me comfortable," end of quote. So, in this chapter on page 198, Levinas uses the example of murder, writing, "To kill is not to dominate, but to annihilate. It is to renounce the comprehension absolutely. Murder exercises a power over what escapes power. The alterity that is expressed in the face provides the unique matter possible for total negation." In other words, whereas something can be the neutralization of difference between two, to murder is to use another as if that other is for me. There are any number of absurd ethical contradictions to explore in his work. For example, on page 202, Levinas talks about how important lying is. The other is only really an other if they have the language in alterity or individuality to lie to me, to deceive me. If I'm in a relationship with a real human being, it's at least partly predicated on the ability that we have to we have the ability to break trust and deceive each other. In part 6, called The Other and Others, he discusses contradictions of justice and Martin Buber's I-thou relationship. On part 7, on page 215, Levinas talks about how the other's face is actually a type of mask, writing, quote, "The other does not only appear in his face," end of quote, as if to suggest that that which we see in the other is actually hiding the thoughts that go on behind those eyes. So putting it all together, there's quite a bit here, but this is another one of those texts with a lot of material that's ripe for meaning making. Sometimes Levinas's argument is clear, and at other times his writing is just specific enough to give you a hint of an idea, and he means for you to come to your own examples and applications. What I appreciate is his lack of interest in clear delineations and definitions. When Levinas talks about ethics, he isn't doing it through the language of duty, of deontology, or through the language of utilitarian concern for the maximum happiness of the greatest number. Nothing's that simple for Levinas. It's all about the contradictions and the irresolvable gaps. No, instead he's suggesting ethics only matters in this intersubjective space between people who can never fully know each other, can never fully know what the other desires, and indeed we have such a depth that we can never even fully know what we ourselves desire. And that means that ethics is predicated on this problem of what he calls radical alterity.